The Red Hatter Store presents a story by Anna Emm.
The Famous Ghost. In South Africa, we have a popular folktale, a ghost story about a young lady who hitchhiked next to the road on the way to Uniondale. Legend has it that she is the ghost of the late Maria Roo, who travelled with her fiancé by car to Uniondale on the evening of April the 12th, 1968. According to the story, the couple did not reach their destination because her fiancé lost control of the car and they had an accident in which Maria Roo died. A few years later, in 1976, a few motorists began mentioning that they had seen a woman sitting by the side of the road, exactly in the same spot where the accident had taken place. Their description of the woman all matched that of Maria Roo. The police station in Uniondale got used to travellers stopping by at night, white in the face, reporting the stranded woman by the roadside. It was only after a few years that the story became more interesting. I was working at the front desk of the police station, doing my night shift with Paul and David. I had just made us a second cup of coffee when a man burst into the station. He was clearly upset about something, and after a glass of strong sugar water, we got him to tell us what had happened. The man, Alex Noble, was on his way to Uniondale on his motorbike when the figure of a young lady appeared next to the road in his spotlight. She was hitchhiking for a lift. Since it was already after 11, and he thought she might be in some kind of trouble, he stopped. "Are you all right?" Alex asked, but got no reply. He asked her where she was going, and she lifted her hand slowly to point towards Uniondale. "Get on," he said, and pointed to the back of his bike. She was light, and he hardly felt her, he said. He handed her his spare helmet, and she put it on. When she had fastened it, he drove off. What was peculiar about it, Alex told us, was that she never spoke. She never seemed to look at me, but seemed lost in thought, absent-minded. But I thought she had been through some kind of trauma and decided to bring her to the police station. I could not leave her by the side of the road, you know. After about 3 kilometers, Alex looked in his rearview mirror and went cold all over. There was no one behind him on the bike. The girl was gone. With screeching tires, he brought the motorbike to a halt and turned around. There was no one. "Of course I imagined the worst," Alex said, shivering. "I thought she had passed out and fallen off. I turned around and drove all the way back, slowly, searching for her. But she was gone. There was no sight of her. And then I started thinking that it was not possible for someone to get off the back of my bike without me feeling it. The weight, you know? Not even a frail girl like that. And then I saw it. The helmet. The spare one I had given her, remember? It was fastened neatly to the back of my bike." I looked at Paul and David, and they looked at me. Who was going to be the one to tell Alex about the ghost of Uniondale? The man was already so rattled. But I finally and carefully related to him the story of Maria Roo and all the previous accounts we have heard about the ghost lady. The poor fellow did not take it well, as you can imagine. I must say that I did not really take any of it seriously. You know how one story can get a lot of people into a state of panic, and sooner or later everyone could swear they have seen the same thing. Maybe someone was scaring the motorists. Maybe it was a trick of the light. But a ghost? Not likely. A few weeks after Alex Noble had picked up the hitchhiker, we had our second incident. A man and woman, let's call them Mr. and Mrs. Brown, were on their way to Uniondale via the same road. They were tired, and the road was dark and cold. They were new in the area and had never heard about Maria Roo before. When they came to the place where the accident had taken place years ago, they saw a young woman in a white dress appearing in the glow of their headlights next to the road. She was waving at them to stop. I told my husband to pull over, An upset Mrs. Brown told us afterwards at the police station. A girl like that should not be standing alone next to the dark road at that time of night. They pulled over and asked the girl a few questions. Where was she going? What was her name? Why was she here? But she appeared distracted and confused. She looked so frail and cold that the Browns decided to pick her up and take her with them to Uniondale. She climbed into the back of their car and they drove off. Mr. and Mrs. Brown talked for a while, but the girl did not really say anything. So after a while they decided to let her be. It was only when they were approaching Uniondale that they suddenly heard her laugh, softly, and then they heard the back door of the car open. A cold chill came into the car and the door slammed shut again. "Of course we nearly threw over the car," Mr. Brown said, shaken. "I drove it into the grass next to the road and we got out." The back seat of the car was empty, and the road on which they had travelled was quiet and dark. They looked for her frantically and even drove all the way back again to the place where they had picked her up. But she was gone. "We drove back and forth twice," Mrs. Brown said. "The poor girl must have fallen out, and now she's lying next to the road somewhere." After they had given us a description of the girl, we looked at each other. It was definitely our ghost. But to soothe them, David took the van and drove them up and down the same road a few times. There was not a sign of the girl. Even after this account, I still had my doubts. I spoke to Maria's ex-fiancé, who was by then happily married to another lady. He assured me that these were all wild tales and that there was no way Maria could be the hitchhiker scaring so many people on the road to Uniondale. I felt a bit better and continued to offer sugar water to travellers who stumbled into our station with a similar story. One evening, shortly before her last appearance next to the road, I myself was driving that way. I was late for the night shift and stepped down on the gas. I had been visiting some friends of mine and left his house too late. I was not thinking about the ghost, only about the time. As I came upon the place on the road where the accident had been, I saw her. A girl in a white dress hitchhiking next to the road. I went ice cold. I could not tear my eyes away from her, and for a moment I slowed the car down. But then I decided to drive past. I was rattled and shivered all over. As I looked in my rearview mirror, she was gone. The road behind me was empty, and there was no one. I shook my head. What an eerie sight, I thought. I looked forward to telling David and Paul about this. Then, suddenly, I heard the back door of the car open. A cold chill of air came rushing into the car, and I got such a fright I nearly drove off the road. I looked behind me, but the door was closed. There was a pale girl sitting on the back seat behind me. I brought the car to a standstill with screeching tires, and before I knew I was outside. I did not close the door but ran a few steps and then stumbled. I looked back. My car was standing stranded by the side of the road. The front door was open. I walked back, slowly, very slowly, and pulled my flashlight from my uniform. I shone it at the car, at the back seat, but there was no one. The car was empty, and the dead quietness of the road seemed to be mocking me. After a while my heart was beating normally again, and I got back into the car. I drove to the police station without looking back once. Of course, I never told anyone about this, not after my loud refusal to believe any of the other accounts. The last time anyone saw her was around 1984. That was the year her ex-fiancé died in a car accident. She had never appeared to anyone since. But the town of Uniondale will forever be famous for its hitchhiking ghost.
This story was brought to you by Anna Emm Productions. Visit our Red Hatter store at www.redhatter.co.za.